Okay, so here I got tyrosine and magnesium, which is gonna make my brain even better as it comes up and up on this commentary of a podcast interview. While I wait till I metabolically peak so my brain activity can achieve its optimum state for the real serious work of the day. It's a beautiful tea my brother made me. But as you, oh, Atlanta! I told her she should come over and I would give her rubs. Come here. Come here, Atlanta. Come here. Come here. Come here, my blessed kitty. Blessed kitty. Blessed kitty. Blessed kitty. I already told her, I said, I'll give you rubs if you come over, and she did. She's a very intelligent kitty. What a wonderful kitty. So, I just listened to my body, and the headache I had at the beginning is gone. I feel really good and feeling better as the supplements all hit me and the caffeine hits me and the food gets digested in the right order and peristalsis happens and nutrients get absorbed and everything does its role. And my brain starts to unwind and relax and turn on to access higher the realms of consciousness and functionality to the point where kitties just come over to me and give me love and I can watch videos with kitties. This is just very much what I like to do. This is happy, happy, happy day. Happy day, happy day. Happy day, happy day. I feel like the Godfather. Hello, Atlanta. Yes, Atlanta. This is exactly what I want to do with you, Atlanta. It's my cat, Atlanta. I've loved her for a long time. I've had this cat since I was 11 years old. My other cat, Midnight, died because otherwise you would have come back. I love that cat, Midnight. But this is my Atlanta. I got her and her brother, Ajax. He's dead now, but we have him cremated in the basement. And this is my cat, Atlanta. She's wonderful. I don't know if you can even see her, really. But, like, you turn it down. No, Atlanta. No. Oh, you can't really see her. It's okay. You don't need to. She's just my Atlanta. Let's watch the video.
If you add unconscientiousness to that, you got someone who's bordering on psychopathic.
Right.
And they could still be high in openness. They could still be creative and intelligent, but they'd be manipulative as hell and callous.
Yeah.
I'm not like that because I don't want to manipulate people. Because manipulating people it's just not like a nice way to be. So this is the Atlanta baby. She's a good baby. The video is not about her, even though she's wonderful. Unless do you want to get in the video, Atlanta? You want to say hi? No, you just want to get your rubs. Find you a good spot to get your rubs. No, you gotta stay. You gotta stay, Atlanta. You gotta stay and be a happy kitty. Then get your kids a cat. I don't know. Makes them very empathetic. You want empathy. You want to just like have a love for living beings. That's what makes you not a psychopath.
I would say that another thing I was going to ask you is because you worked in Hollywood, and that is a place that invites people who want to make a display of themselves, let's say. And there's some utility in that, right? We want people to be actors. We want them to be enthusiastic and entertaining.
Yes.
But is it possible that a lot of this you saw was a consequence of the form of industry that you were involved in, especially in Hollywood?
Well, definitely. But after the book came out, my first book, The 48 Laws, it became hugely popular in the hip hop world among musicians, which is why I ended up doing a book with 50 Cent. And I found out that the music industry was even worse than Hollywood. And then I was in Washington for a book tour for the 48 Laws, and this woman came running up to me who worked at Voice of America, and she was saying, "You have no idea how the 48 Laws of Power exactly describe the environment I'm in." And then I was at a conference with people who were in nonprofits in San Diego, and this woman was saying,
"Is it any coincidence that Belovid 18 happens and the 48 Laws of Power becomes like in all Barnes and Nobles?" Like 2 years later, a year later.
Boy, you described the nonprofit work politically. It is so perfectly. It is so political. It's so much about ego. So
it's horrible. That's true of the nonprofit world. Well, I mean, that might have to do with that moral posturing, eh?
Well, the way I look at it is you had a place like the Soviet Union where your degree of power wasn't based on any kind of statistics. It wasn't that you performed better than others. It wasn't that your economic branch was outperforming others and therefore you were elevated to a higher position. It was pure politicking. It was pure manipulation. How close could you get to the
dominance hierarchy maneuvering.
Yeah. So when you have like a nonprofit world where it's not based on money or results, it's more on you get very political environments like that where there's no kind of quantification of what one is doing superior work than others.
Yeah, I talked to Adrian Wooldridge, and he wrote some books on the history of meritocracy, and they're very, very interesting. He writes for The Economist, and that the idea of meritocracy is under assault now. I think the idea of merit per se is under assault, and what Wooldridge has done was look at how societies were structured.
People don't believe in merit, they just believe in certification.
In the absence of the meritocratic ethos. And so that's in the absence of a belief that there is such a thing as productive competence. And he talked about nepotism, which, by the way, psychopaths practice nepotism. They're not only selfish, they do differentially benefit their immediate kin. And hereditary aristocracy. So if you don't have meritocracy, and if your hierarchies aren't predicated on competence, you don't get a non-competitive utopia.
No, not at all.
Exactly. You get nepotism and this political infighting, and that is it's no wonder that affected you, because that's absolutely toxic. It's just sickening, and it does.
I think nepotism is good, but I started a company with my brother. Is that nepotism? I don't know. If it is, then I like nepotism. But I think we just need more people starting companies, because I think the problem is there's too few companies.
Produce a situation where the worst people torture the people who are competent for their competence.
Because every person's their own company if people aren't acting like it.
Yeah.
It's really ugly.
Yeah, and when I came out of university, I went to University of Wisconsin, and I had my degree in classics and literature, etc. I wasn't expecting this. I expected that the harder you tried, the better the work that you produced.
Yeah, no, I was punished for that.
The more you tried to get results, that's what mattered, right? And then to suddenly be blindsided because nobody in our culture tells young people that this is what the world is going to be like. And that's sort of a lot of where this book came out of. I wrote it when I was 38, 39, so I was already a bit older. But your parents don't prepare you for this. Schools don't prepare you for this. University certainly doesn't prepare you for it. In fact, it leads you to believe the opposite. And so you enter the work world, and if you're entering a place more like what we're describing here, not like what you were describing, some of the jobs you had, you're blindsided. You had no preparation for it. Nothing prepared you for it, and you don't know how to react.
Well, if you're naive in that manner, two things happen.
And I was naive, yeah.
One is that you're much more likely to be exploited. That definitely happens. The other thing is you're much more likely to be traumatized, because trauma sort of occurs in proportion to how much of your belief it demolishes. And so if you have a too positive and too naive view of the world, and especially if you encounter someone malevolent, they can really do you in psychologically. Yeah. And they often will too, because,
oh, God. Be careful in dating, guys. That's all I'll say.
They have their reasons. And so
people who are drowning will try to pull you down with them.
Yeah. Yeah, I can remember I had a job in journalism, and I wrote this article about Italy, and I thought it was a great article. And then the editor brought me in for lunch, and he was like having his second or third martini, and he started to tell me that, Robert, you're never going to be a writer. You don't have the discipline for it. You're just too wild. You don't communicate to the reader, etc. You need to get out of this business. It's not for you. It was very painful. And then in looking back at it, I think he had set me up for this. I think that he had kind of commissioned this article knowing that it was going to have some problems with it, etc. And that he was deliberately setting me up in this situation so that and I think a lot of it came from envy.
I know it's happened to me in school numerous times.
talk
Envy
a
is a
lot.
bad one, and envy and resentment, man, those are corrosive. They're soul and culture destroying emotions. You know, when
Like
I
literally, like I honestly hate the university and public education system for what it did to my belief in beneficial authority figures in the public sphere. I just don't like. I'm like any. I don't know. I mean, I really actually don't think there are. Like, I don't know. I'm highly suspect of everyone. I'm like, really? Oh, how are you trying to f me over? Because it's just constant. But I think that the internet is opening that up because now at least we can find like you're not relegated to like your local priest or your local high school teacher for information or your local college for information. You can learn from Jordan Peterson, Robert Greene, and myself. So
worked with my clients, we talked a lot about resentment.
keep not clenching my teeth and like keep relaxing my body. I have these neurotic holding patterns of carried over from years of stress. Life is stressful. It's not bad that I've experienced years of stress. It's just something that I must consciously be aware of. Like the tendency to like grip my teeth, like put my teeth together, like and then like start like moving them to the side until I experience tension. If I keep doing that, I will flatten my teeth. So I'm gonna do that.
Resentment a
Mhm.
lot. And I had kind of an axiom, which is, well, if you're resentful, there's only one of two things going on. One is you're whiny and neurotic, and it's time to grow the hell up and take some responsibility.
Right.
And
I've considered that thoroughly.
so you've got to ask yourself that. And the second is someone is taking advantage of you, and you have something to say or do that you're not saying or doing. And so we try to sort out which of
Yeah.
those it was. And then if it was,
Or is there? Hmm. Let's hear.
was that they had something to say or do to stand up for themselves, for example,
Certainly.
then we just
I think like in my situation, like I feel a high degree of resentment, but I feel like it's just more about the situation of insomnia, and it's more about the fact that I need to do something about that to help people. And it's not necessarily that like it's someone's fault. It's just that I have a responsibility to do something about it. Because I do, like, let's go back and listen to this because it's interesting.
a lot. And I had kind of an axiom, which is, well, if you're resentful, there's only one.
So I am somewhat resentful, but I'm also somewhat not resentful. I'm resentful because I don't like that I had to experience that, and I don't like that the world evaluates me based on, like, I don't know, like my parents and people are just like, oh, like you should like have like this amount of success. And it's just, I mean, screw them anyway, but like, it's just like people being like, you should have this amount of success based on like what we think you should have. And I'm like, well, I don't know. Like, it's just like a literally, like, I had to, like, so the first 19 years of my life figuring out how to sleep at all while still in school, wrestling, doing all that stuff. And then, and dealing with the health issues that came from that peeing blood, pooping blood, constant pain, fatigue, diarrhea, nausea, vomiting, just all this terrible stuff. So basically, I had to deal with all that. Then on top of dealing with all that, like I have to like figure out how to like navigate through the pandemic as soon as like I start sleeping regularly. Well, first of all, it's the nonsense college system where I'm dealing with communist professors and being targeted by my professors, and like professors just giving me bad grades for not repeating their ideas back to them, and like just a really horrible college experience. I'm gonna make my own video series on because it was just really, really, really horrible. I mean, to the point where like they would test me on material that I hadn't learned. Like, it was, so I'd receive a test every Monday in my biology class about the slides that were to be covered the day following on Tuesday, such as on slide 14, Mary has an illness. Was it cancer, diabetes, heart disease, or Parkinson's? I pointed out to the professor that it was impossible for me to complete this quiz in my discussion section correctly because I didn't have access to the information. I said, can I have the slides? So I go for it. Nope. Just do your best. Everyone else had their discussion sections Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. It just, I selected Monday. I was like, oh, it's a discussion, so we'll be discussing things. I guess it would be fine to have it before the lecture because that's an option on there. It's the only one that fit my schedule. So I did that. And like, you go to the dean, they just don't care. Like, I had so many experiences like that. I keep going. It was just like constant horrible. So that And that's their fault. Like, screw them. Like, screw them to fucking hell for, like, doing that to me. Like, fuck those people. Fuck them. They're fucking scumbags. They're fucking pieces of shit scumbags. The entire institution of UMass Amherst, I fucking hate them. Like, I think they fucking suck. Like, I really worked my ass off at that school. And, like, I ran into constant problems. I went to the administration again and again and again. And you just get pushed around the bureaucratic hellscape while teachers just F over your grades because you're trying to, like, actually learn. That was my, again, there were a lot of classes that weren't like that, but I had at least like one or two every semester that were that. And the rest of them weren't even that high quality. There were a few high quality classes I took, but they weren't really that high quality. And I graduated with my degree in neuroscience. So whatever to all those people who are like, if they're like, oh, you just resent. No, I graduated. Like, horrible experience. Horrible experience. Just a horrible experience. And, yeah, I don't know. And then, like, more health problems, fixing those, coaching people, raising a family. I mean, like, it's just, I do feel like, I don't know, it's just, it's hard. It's very, very hard. And, like, we're not evaluated by the difficulty of the challenges that we attempt. We're just evaluated largely by standards of, I don't know, how does what you're doing make me feel about my life right now? And it's frustrating. But you gotta have those difficult conversations with people. You know what I mean? You gotta, like, confront that shit because it's just gonna eat away at you and not let it control your mind.
One of two things going on. One is you're whiny and neurotic and it's time to grow the hell up and take some responsibility.
Right.
And so you've got to ask yourself that. And the second is someone is taking advantage of you and you have something to say or do that you're not saying or doing. And so we try to sort out which of those it was. And then if it was that they had something to say or do to stand up for themselves, for example,
Certainly.
then we just strategize like mad. So I had one client. For example, I really liked her. She was smart, man. Very, very, very competent, honest, hardworking, conscientious, diligent, attractive lawyer.
Yeah.
And
The thing that helps me, though, is that I know I'm going to succeed inevitably, so it's not really, like, I'm like, okay, there is a payout. So, like, it's just the suffering of entrepreneurship. It's like, you just the not knowing, the, like, everyone thinking you're crazy.
moved firms, and those firms can be pretty cutthroat. You know, they're full of prosecutors. What do you expect, right? And,
Right.
And one guy, when she went into the firm, basically swiped her biggest client through a series of manipulative actions.
Right.
And, you know, kind of lulled her into a false sense of security, sort of started to cooperate with her and then shunted her out. And then when she started to complain about it, he started distributing rumors that she had mental health issues and it was absolutely awful. So we spent about 6 months strategizing how to deal with him. And so it was successful, you know, and then I love doing that sort of thing. It was such fun helping people who were being bullied by...
I do.
Yeah.
I do the same thing as well. Yeah, I'm sorry.
So why do you think this was so popular? Or you said the music industry.
One of the 48 laws is to make things appear easier than they are. So I'll hint at how difficult it's been to bring to market this insomnia solution that I brought forth and bring to market Week to Warrior as a whole. But, oh my God, guys, it's brutal. It's brutal.
Industry was particularly pathological. At least this is the reports you got. So why do you think that is? Do you have any theories?
Less so now that my brother's working with me, though, because like that really has allowed me to take off over the last 6 months, because he is just awesome at helping me automate this stuff, so I can actually like run the business and make money and get stuff done and have free time to sleep. So thank God.
About that, and then why do you think your books got to be so popular among rappers? Say.
Why do you think the music industry is the way it is?
I mean, do you think there's something specific about that industry that lends itself to that kind of corruption?
And I've had a lot of people give me the same kind of feedback. There's a lot of money around, right? Huge amounts of money around. And people are producers of music are they have
because the distribution channels are all controlled. They don't have access to their own marketing, which is the primary job of any company, is to gain access to their own marketing.
a very exploitative kind of model of business, which is they seduce a first-time artist with a lot of money, but the contract is, and eventually they own all of the work, etc. So it was a very exploitative business model, particularly for African American musicians who were historically very exploited. And so it's like Hollywood, where so much of it is about pleasing people and having the right demeanor. So 50 Cent, who I wrote the book with, he said, he dealt crack on the streets of Southside Queens. He was a hustler at the age of 9. He saw everything, but nothing prepared him for the kind of Machiavellian games that music industry people would play. Right,
you want to take a straightforward criminal over a psychopathic manipulator any day.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, and you talked about money. Like, I'd rather deal with someone greedy, like honestly greedy, than someone manipulative, underground politicker.
Right.
Because at least with the greed, well, you can negotiate with someone like that. You know what they want. They're kind of unidimensional. And you might have your moral qualms about it, but I think that's partly why
I want lots of material resources so I can be happy and satisfied.
Admirer of capitalism. It's like greed is not the worst of the vices by any stretch of the imagination.
No, I agree with you on that. And so, why are my books popular? I think there's a combination of things. First of all, I'm giving people something that's not out there, kind of a realism. And I think a lot of people are inwardly very tired and very sick of all the kind of coddling that goes on with readers and in our culture, where the people are trying to perpetuate this myth that it's all about cooperation and getting along, and that business is kind of this.
Yeah, I keep telling you guys, read Winning Through Intimidation. Business is winning through intimidation.
World where people are all on the same page trying to create the best product possible, etc. And they kind of have the same kind of illusions that I had. And so the harshness of the book that first kind of shocked you sort of excites people. It appeals to their shadow side, if you will, and that shadow side is very much repressed in our culture. And I think artists and writers and people who produce work that kind of vents some of that shadow, some of those darker emotions that people have, it has a very attracting pull on them. So I think that's part of the reason, because there's a kind of a notoriety around the book, and people almost feel like it's something naughty when they have it. And so I think that's part of the appeal of it.
So I have a friend.
This is the reason why I've canceled my doorbell camera subscription. This brand new
friend, he's a really good.
That was a bad advertisement. They should have made a more engaging advertisement.
Friend of mine, and I've known him since I was in college, and he's a tough guy. I mean, he grew up in under rather poverty-stricken circumstances in northern Alberta, really on a frontier piece of land. Like, it had only been broken 50 years before by his father, who was a longshoreman and an ex-military guy. Good guy, his father. But this guy grew up, and he is tough. He worked in lead smelters, and he wandered around Western Canada. And he was my roommate when I went to college, and is still a good friend of mine. And he ended up working with, like, delinquents. He went into social work, oddly enough, and he ended up working with some of the worst delinquents in Canada. And he's a really good guy, and he likes to help people get better. But he isn't naive at all. And then part of the reason that he was good at working with the delinquents was because there were no tricks they could get up to that he couldn't see right through. And that was partly because he had a real integrated shadow. I mean, I'll give you an example of him. So one day, I was living in this town called Grand Prairie, and it was at the height of the oil boom. And so it was a rough town, and there were lots of rough bars in it, and lots of young men in there with plenty of money and they come in for 3 days after being out minus 40 weather, working on the oil rigs, and they were ready to party, man. And we had a party one night in this kind of frat house that I went to college in, and way too many people showed up, and some of them were real troublemakers. And we had a table that was pretty full of beer bottles and vodka bottles and so forth, and one guy just went over and tore the leg off and knocked the table over, and then a bunch of us got together and chased them all out. And this friend of mine, he said, "Oh, they'll be back." And so he went upstairs and he put on some steel-toed cowboy boots. It was just like a bloody Western. He came marching down the stairs. And just as he entered the living room, there was a big knock on the front door. It was these hooligans coming back to cause grief. And he just didn't break stride. He opened the door. He pulled open the door, and there was a guy standing there ready to fight, and he kicked him underneath the chin with his steel-toed cowboy boot, knocked him right over the front porch, and the battle was on. But that was exactly what he was like,
Right.
And he had his shadow was integrated. He was a great roommate. He reciprocated everything. I always knew if I bought groceries one week, he'd buy it the next. Like, he was a straight shooter. You could trust him, but he was not naive, man. And that made him able to deal with delinquents and to help them. So that's part of that integration of that shadow.
Yeah, I go very deeply into the shadow in a chapter in my last book, The Laws of Human Nature. And I try and talk about how one integrates the shadow, because it's not an easy answer for that. People are kind of perplexed. Well, I have this dark side, and I explain a lot of where it comes from and how a lot of your aggressive impulses, like the room of 2-year-olds that you were talking about, you have that as well. I'm talking to the people that are my readers. You have that aggressiveness when you were young, and it got socialized out of you, and then it got repressed, and it's like a lost self that lives inside of you, and it's screaming to come out. How do you integrate it?
Helps me integrate that jiu-jitsu.
And so the main thing is you have to be aware that you have this shadow side. You can't run away from it. You have to acknowledge that it exists. You almost have to embrace it in a way.
A good parent too does everything he or she can not to repress that. Like, what you want to do with children is you want them to be forceful. You want them to have some power.
Exactly.
You want them to integrate that capacity for aggression into, let's say, lucid conversation. You want them to be able to stand up for themselves in family discussions. If you just punish them for being aggressive, let's say, for talking back or something like that, you don't guide that into more sophisticated development. You see this in schools too now. When my kids went to school, this was so dumb. We had a rule in our house, which was, you don't have to follow stupid rules.
That's a good rule.
But if you get caught, you have to put up with consequences. So one rule was, the school had, not only could you not throw snowballs, you couldn't make them. And so they were trying to, exactly, you should shake your head, that's for sure. It's like, because their answer, and this was all politically correct nonsense, non-competitive games. We're only going to play non-competitive games. It's like, first of all, I studied Piaget.
Yeah.
A hockey game is not competitive exactly, because in a hockey game, no one brings a basketball. Everybody plays hockey. So that's cooperation. And then on the team, you have to cooperate. And like, if you're the star, but you never pass, you're just a dumb son of a bitch. You're not the star. And so there's tremendous amount of cooperation.
It's not about passing out of kindness. It's just knowing your limitations, so you let other people do stuff.
In all those competitive games, they're in.
See, who's running a company? If you try to do everything yourself, then you're stupid, because the point is to delegate and have other people do things they're good at.
Integrated. And this idea that,
you pretend you're the best at everything, because you're not. Or in the best position to do things all the time, because a lot of it's positioning.
Make children better by not allowing them to be competitive.
It's disgusting.
It is. That's the Freudian devouring mother, right? That's, everyone's safe and no one's going to ever hurt anyone. And
that's kind of where a lot of young people are, they enter the world where they've been coddled, where they think that there are no winners, that everyone is, it's just win-win situations. And that's where they get really shocked by the realities of the world. So all this coddling and this idea that there doesn't have to be a winner. We don't have to get prizes for first place. Everybody should get a prize. All you're doing is setting your children up for massive, shocks when they enter the world and they see that it's not like that.
Yeah, and then they get disillusioned and depressed, or traumatized by it. I mean, when my son's hockey team in his school, they won the city championship, which was a big deal, and the school was pretty happy about that. And to his credit, so was the coach. But the principal, who was this authoritarian empath, she was an awful person, I thought.
Authoritarian empath. That's interesting.
She used moral virtue as a club.
Yeah.
And it was, there's plenty of those people around.
Yeah,
and she said, well, really, today we're all winners. And the coach had
Nauseating.
exactly. No, it is sickening because and my son was just appalled by it. But the coach had enough guts. He said, no, the hockey team won, and it's not like the kids in the school were jealous. Some of them were obviously, but most of them were really happy, like you are when your sports team wins. And most people are generous enough so that they're able to celebrate someone else's victory without. And that's the same. I saw this with birthday parties. I just bloody well hated this. It's like, well, every child gets a gift bag. It's like, no, they have their damn birthday. Every child doesn't need a damn gift bag. And this same naive, treacly, and it's authoritarian too, because it imposes this kind of view of the world. It's like, no, it's this kid's day to be special. That's why we're celebrating this kid. The rest of them, if they can't take that, it's like there's something wrong with the way that they've been treated and attended to.
Well, a lot of my book.
I've always just had this thought that there's got to be a better way to do trash.
Books, I've tried to remove the kind of taboo or the negative associations we have with a word like power.
So with that advertisement, they need to establish relevance. Again, I don't understand why I care.
Or with the word ambition. I try and say ambition is a good thing. It means that you believe in yourself, you have some self-love, and you believe you're worth something, and you want to go out and achieve and create something worthwhile for other people. So ambition is a positive thing. But so many people are just kind of embarrassed about being a human being, embarrassed about our primate nature, embarrassed about our own aggressive impulses.
This is partly why boys are failing in our schools now at a disproportionate rate. And I see there's an assault of the sort that you're describing on the better part of striving masculinity. And I had a friend who killed himself because he identified his ambition with the patriarchal force that's devouring the environment, let's say, and that's the cause of historical horror. And you might say, well, no one takes that onto themselves to that degree. And you can say that, but that you just don't know what the hell you're talking about. People take that onto themselves all the time. And then they start to identify the best part of them that strives forward with the destructive impulses of humanity. And they're so ashamed because they can't do anything good then, but in principle, he tried to be as inoffensive and harmless in every possible way as he possibly could. And it just sucked all the life out of him.
You end up turning that aggressive energy on yourself is what ends up happening. And that's maybe leads to suicide, the ultimate kind of self-aggression. I know that I personally have, as I said, I definitely have a shadow side. I'm very aggressive and extremely competitive, and I have a lot of anger. So a lot of those experiences in my youth made me very angry. But the way I kind of integrated my, I'm not saying this is a model, but the way I integrated it was through my books. So I kind of, that anger kind of seeps through the material that I write, and I find I can only write when I have that kind of anger. But I don't rant. I don't yell and kind of put people down. I kind of channel it into something productive and something creative.
That's the goal.
And so to
I
me,
definitely do that when
Create a better vision.
I'm lecturing. And people have commented, some of the people who've criticized me that I'm an angry person, and which isn't true, but it's definitely that anger, that capacity for anger definitely is something that gives you force, and it can push, and anger definitely. So psychophysiologically, so imagine that this is obviously a thought experiment, but imagine you're chasing a cat with a broom. Well, the cat's going to run from the broom. But if you corner the cat with the broom, it will attack you, even though it's just a cat. Well, and the reason for that is that fear will facilitate either freezing or escape.
Right.
But sometimes fear isn't the right response, and anger will suppress fear. And so one of the tools that we have at our disposal psychologically is anger as an antidote to the terror that would otherwise freeze you. And you can integrate that. That's, if you have some justifiable moral outrage, let's say something really annoys you, or I shouldn't say that deeply violates your sense of moral propriety. I don't mean...
Enjoy this while you can, guys. I can be open in a certain way now before I blow up. Soon you'll need to be on my private Discord servers to hear me be this open. Or maybe not. We'll see. Maybe I'll have another channel called Cancel Me.
Trivial things. Then the fact of that forceful response can motivate you to do things. Well, it does for me for lecture, but certainly to write. It takes a lot of energy to write, man. You need all those sources of energy if you're going to be able to do it.
That's right.
That's why it's so, running this business, I had to dip into all the crazy shit I went through with Insomnia.
To turn it on yourself, to discipline yourself, you know? It's like I had to grab myself by the scruff of the neck when I was a young guy to sit down, God damn it, and write. You know, and there's a force that's necessary, to, especially if you're open, because you're all over the place, if you're creative, to get yourself to sit down and focus.
Yes, that's right. Yeah. And, you know, some of that anger, you know, I think Jung talks about this, is that dark side contains a lot of energy. It contains a lot of power. Those 2-year-olds that are kicking and screaming, that's all this kind of force behind it. And when you sort of are ashamed of it and you push that down, you're kind of getting rid of an incredible well of energy that you can use for your creativity, for your work, etc. You can take that energy, like you say, and create discipline out of it, do something creative out of it, support some cause that you really believe in.
That's what I really do. I take the angst I feel about the frustration of having to live my whole life with insomnia, and I use it to fuel the business. 'Cause I'm like, well, it'll all be worth it when I cure the world of insomnia.
You know, so that shadow side, when you deny it, only negative things will happen, and it is extremely important for people to first recognize it in themselves. You know, and it's very hard for a lot of people to do that.
Well, I found, like I said earlier, one of the best ways in there is resentment. You watch yourself like, well, because if you're resentful. You know, you're feeling like you're being victimized and mistreated. It's like, okay, well, maybe you are. Okay, and you think there's no anger in that resentment, so you're not looking hard enough. If you watch your fantasies, for example, if you're resentful and you watch the fantasies that flit through your imagination, like you might not want to attend to them because they can be so brutal.
Right.
But because if someone is oppressing you genuinely and you're not standing up for yourself, then there'll be these compensatory fantasies. Yeah. So one day I'll tell you a story about that. So one day I'd been renovating my house and it took a long time. And the neighbors, this house was a complete derelict and it was a semi-detached, like really a derelict. It hadn't been touched since like 1927. It had gas fittings in the upper floor. It needed to be completely gutted. And so we gutted it. And my daughter got sick at exactly the same time, really sick. And so it was stressful and difficult. And the neighbors they called the city on us. They did everything they could to make it difficult, even though they were attached to us and wanted to sell their house. So we probably added like $25,000 to the value of their house because it was no longer attached to a derelict. And then just as we were finishing, my sister and her husband came to visit, and I was making tea for them, and I closed the cupboard. So it clicked, and the neighbors banged on the wall. And then that night I couldn't sleep, and I had really been pushed to my limit by these people. And I had these visions in my mind of burning the damn place down. And I thought, oh man, if you're starting to think about burning the place down, you should probably go say something. So I put on my parka and I went outside about 6 a.m. and I just waited for them to come out. They never did, but I went and knocked over on the door and I said, I was making tea for my sister last night. And I closed the cupboard. You didn't happen to bang on the wall because you heard my cupboard closing, did you? And they said, yeah. And I said, okay, look, if you bug me anymore, I'm going to cause you so much trouble you cannot possibly imagine it.
Yeah.
And I meant it. It was like, because I knew it was brewing in the back of my mind. I said, because I was done. It was like, you want a war? You have no idea what you're getting into. And so they backed into the kitchen, and like 2 hours later, they came over and said, oh, we're sorry and we won't do it again. But like what we did was the mistake you talk about. We backtracked continually trying to please them, and every time they complained, we did what they wanted because we assumed we were dealing with reasonable people, but we weren't. And the only way to stop them was with a show of force. It was like, you want to.
I feel like in a weird way, I'm in a similar predicament with my life in general. And I feel like a lot of people with insomnia probably are as well, where people feel like they're giving them a lot. Like um, my parents like still like help support me because like I can't fully support myself off Week to Warrior yet, and I use funds from previous businesses to keep this going at the moment. But like when they've been supporting me, they have this attitude of, well, like don't we do so much for you? Like why do you need so much? And it's just ultimately that I've had to struggle with so much, and it's not visible struggle. Like you don't someone doesn't appear whipped and beaten when they have insomnia. They look pretty normal. They just are suffering horribly on the inside constantly. And that was most of my life, like 90% of my life. 80% of my life, maybe not counting including like my whole life from birth to like 80% of my life, I would say it was 70, like 70, certainly 50%, but probably more like 70% was just like suffering horribly from insomnia and the subsequent issues that came with insomnia. And it's like it's just I don't know, I've always had like sources of tension with my parents over like my grades in school and various things, or like I don't know, it's just, and like especially during periods where like my health has gotten worse, like when I've been married, where like my wife has been frustrated with me, like I can't do more. And like my brother has been frustrated with me in business too, and sometimes like health issues, but like people get very, very, very frustrated and ultimately will take that frustration out on you when you have a lot of needs, because again it's like
So they backed into the kitchen, and like 2 hours later, they came over and said,
it's like
"Oh,
people like think that they keep on like making concessions, and somebody's like, oh well, I keep on giving you all this stuff, why do you keep needing more? And again, like, I've talked to a lot of clients with insomnia, and this is like a hard topic for me to get into because like I know my dad watches all my YouTube videos, my parents watch all my YouTube videos, and they'd be like, "What do you like?" Like even today, they'd be like, "What do you mean we didn't like give all that we could to you?" And I'm like, "Well, you did. It's just that like because you're not me and you're not going through what I'm going through, your understanding of the situation is fundamentally based on a perspective that really has less to do with reality than you might think, because you're interacting with how I'm presenting to the world. I can't present to the world how miserable and tortured I am on the inside because first of all, no one would want to be around me. And then second of all, um it would just like be bad for me. So then they don't have an accurate understanding of the degree to which I'm suffering. But they think that they do. And like everyone does. Everyone, my wife, everyone thinks that they do. Like everyone who doesn't have insomnia, I'm just talking about the insomniacs. Everyone who doesn't have insomnia thinks that they know. But like they just don't. Like until you've been up for a week, for a month, for 40 days or whatever, like you don't know what that is like years to recover. Like I have PTSD. Like I literally like it's kind of weird. Like I've stopped smoking weed for months at a time, and it hasn't really benefited me to not smoke weed or CBD or any of that stuff. So I've gone back to it, but like I have this like I need to meditate like every day. Like I need to like really. I mean that helps me for like very like just leveling out my mind when my mind is overstressed and tired and stuff. But like meditating all the time, like I don't know, it's just like PTSD. I mean, really, like I'm beating around the bush because I don't like to come out about weakness. It's very difficult for me to do so, but it's like I have like mental. It's better though. Like doing the whole thing with Week to Warrior, getting the course completed, marketing the course, selling the course, helping people with insomnia. All of this stuff has like making the supplements now is just a practical matter, but like all this stuff has now helped. Like I really feel like I have, again, like this whole video is dark side taking control over your life. I feel like I have a greater sense of control over my life because I'm sleeping. My health is like great and improving. I no longer feel like I'm dying all the time and like nauseous and throwing up and like I guess still like I don't know if I take like a bunch of like supplements and my stomach's like not doing the best, I still will puke because that's just a thing. But like you learn how to not deal with that. And like I kind of like push the boundaries in order to figure out what works and what doesn't, and what will make you puke and what won't make you puke, which is again why you guys benefit so much from learning from me. But it's just like I keep thinking about the movie The Legend of Bagger Vance and the authentic swing the before I made this before I made the course and before I started marketing the course. It's about your authentic swing and like the one thing that's authentic to you to accomplish your goals, to accomplish your dreams. It's in the movie he's trying to get the ball in the hole because it's a golf movie. He's saying you can't look at the flag as a dragon you need to slay. You need to look at it with softer eyes. And it's like it's so I've already beat the insomnia demon. I did that the second I created the course and started marketing it. That was what defeated it. But ultimately, so that will go on forever, and the insomnia demon will eventually die. Insomnia will be eradicated in the end, thanks to me, which is what I've ultimately wanted. But like, and that gives me a deep sense of peace and control because I literally like I've lived like my whole life like in absolute horror, fear, and terror of I guess what I just call the insomnia demon, like just the freaking demon that comes for you and keeps you up for weeks and at a time, and just like tries to get you to take your life while you're not sleeping and your health deteriorates and your mind erodes. That killing that demon has been my life's purpose, so I can like finally like rest easy and having. I feel like I've now set in motion the events that in the end will kill that demon. And that gives me a great sense of control over my life, which I guess eases whatever the feeling of PTSD I call PTSD from having insomnia, because I definitely have PTSD from that, or whatever you call PTSD. I don't know, like just there's not a day or an hour that goes by that I'm not aware of what I went through. It just leaves that much of a mark on my mind. When I do jujitsu, I can forget about it for hours at a time while I'm hiking in the woods. But there's not an hour that goes by that I don't think about just like what that all means. And like what I had to go through to be where I am today. And like how if things had gone differently I wouldn't be here. And like how narrowly I made it. It just like I need to like defeat insomnia globally in some crazy way to like feel like I've won over the demon. Because I feel like even like the fact that I can't go an hour without being aware of it, without like I feel like these scars on my brain from like just the sheer like being up for 30 days plus just like my cortisol systems have never been the same since. I've never had a normal stress response since then. And I just meditate every day so I can keep my stress responses normal. And I'm fucking happy I'm here. And that's why we have Week the Warrior. And it's just like I don't even know how to make sense of it. Like I'm just a normal person walking around, but I have like probably experienced comparable. I mean, I don't know, like who else has stayed up for 30 to 40 days, like weeks at a time, months at a time, like without like any hope of rest, just again and again and again and again while their health deteriorates. Like I don't know, like maybe like people the Soviet Union used to like torture. Like I don't.
like sleep deprivation was like the primary source of torture used by the Soviet Union. Like I was just like walking around, like having been through that for 80% of my life was literally that. And I'm just like this little like 20% last 5 years I haven't had insomnia. And I'm like I don't like I feel it's like there's like 5 years, the past 5 years, this like heavenly realm, and then there's like just a memory before that is like like just like, and I'm like, how do I like incorporate that with the fact that the only thing I've really done for my whole life is just work at figuring out how to fix insomnia and help people with insomnia. And then like I don't know, like it's just crazy. I mean, like it's hard. I mean, like it's hard for my parents because they've had to support me for a lot of this, and they've had to like really help me out because like I've been not well. I've been really not well quite some time. I've just been like, I can't do anything, guys. I'm sorry. And they had to like support me and my wife and stuff, and it's just like I'm like, holy cow, there's no one out there talking about this. And that gives me this a crazy idea that I'm the only person in the world who's talking about this type of insomnia. I mean, Peterson had this an episode of being awake for a month one time. So maybe he's aware of it or something, but like I have this crazy idea that I'm the only one in the world who knows how to fix it because I'm the only one in the world who knows how to fix it. I've never found anyone else who knows how to, and the only thing I've done my whole life is try to figure out how to fix this thing. So I'm like, well, what do I do? Like, what if like I'm just in this bizarre situation, and then like the people I looked up to when I was trying to get medical training to go to medical school got wiped out by a brutal medical system right before Blovid 18 happened. And I'm like, well, I think I exist at an opportune time in the history of the world so that I can share these ideas because people are starting to become aware of the sleep problems. And I think I can kind of get on top of this wave and like ride the wave to help people become aware of these frameworks to help fix their sleep so that we can actually break the cycle of insomnia. Because if you're not aware of these frameworks, I don't think you'd be able to fix insomnia. Like I wasn't. Good luck to you. Um, but like really like I don't know. It's interesting. It's interesting, and it's like me. It's this is like me integrating my own shadow. Like this part of my shadow, and there's probably gonna be other parts of my shadow I have to integrate too. But this is Weak to Warrior itself is like my shadow integration. Me conquering the horror that I spent most of my life living in. And it's like, at least it's working. Like, at least I'm actually like helping people and it's like working. Like, I don't, like, I feel less crazy. I feel this is a great thing. So I'm gonna go take a bathroom break and we can come back with our next video tomorrow. Today for me, but tomorrow for y'all guys.